Communities these days come in all different shapes and sizes. Many years ago, communities were the people who lived near to each other. Our communities were our neighbours. I'd like to start by telling you a story. Earlier this week, I was out walking my dog down the local canal, along with my 6-year-old niece. We were having a lovely time when suddenly the dog started acting a little crazy. She bolted away from the canal and onto a nearby road. Before any of us could do anything, a van ran straight into her. She flipped over in the air. Thankfully, because she bounced, she didn't go under the tyres. We didn't know what the damage was, and before I could begin to process what I and the 6-year-old girl stood next to me had just seen, the dog ran. And boy, can that dog run. The first thing I did was scream. The second was try and run after her. The third was, of course, to call my mum. My mum and dad were immediately in the car and on their way to me. Then my brother and his wife were in the car too. My niece and I began walking in the direction the dog had gone in the hope that we might find her, having realised she really could not keep running. The first person we came across told us he'd seen her run past almost a mile down the canal. The second couple of people had followed her as far as the next break in the canal but couldn't see her. Someone else had tried to grab her and gone after her further. Every person we passed had either seen her or would keep an eye out for her. It was going dark, there were no lights by the canal, and my niece and I were getting scared, although I was trying to hide it. We decided to walk back to where it had happened and hope she'd return there and wait for my family to arrive to make a plan. 2 cyclists came by and I gave them a brief explanation and they said they'd keep a lookout. They were about 100 metres away when they shouted at me to ask if she'd been wearing a coat. There was a man stood next to them. He had a dog on a lead that looked an awful lot like mine. She was there. She was okay. The kindness of a stranger had saved me a long night of walking around a canal. He'd found her sat down, walked her back towards me. After finding my family, who had just arrived at the time, and a quick trip to the vet, we found out she was okay. A couple of cuts and bruises, but nothing a few days' rest couldn't heal. I came home and uploaded the story to Facebook, where I received an outpouring of love and prayers and care for us and relief that she was okay. I tell this story because in it I recognise 3 very distinct communities. 10 to 15 years ago, the story would have only involved 2 communities. Another 10 or so years before that, and it would have only involved 1. The first community, perhaps the predominant, and probably the most important in this story, are the other dog walkers, runners and cyclists that were in the area that evening. At least 20 people know that there was a little dog out on her own and were keeping an eye out for her, telling each other and doing their best to help me get my dog back. And they successfully did. Through communication of several people passing each other, it took only 45 minutes for my little frightened puppy to make it back to me. This was the community acting practically, getting the job done. The second community, who I wouldn't have been able to reach immediately 20 or so years ago, were my family. The people who dropped what they were doing, jumped in their cars and came to help. They rallied around and made sure we were all okay. This was a mixture of both love and practicality. In the end, I didn't need them all that much, but knowing that they were on their way made that cold, dark 45 minutes a lot warmer and brighter than it might have been without them. The final community, the one that wouldn't have existed 10 to 15 years ago, we'll go with 10 because it makes me feel less old, is the Facebook community. Going home alone after going through all that was difficult. I was shaken and I don't like being alone at the best of times. But the outpouring of love from the community of friends that I had created made the evening a whole lot easier. That community helped me pull myself back together at rapid speed. For me, this story says a lot about community. It shows the value of community, it shows the growth and development of communities, and the variety of communities and ways of reaching them. Each of these people showed love and kindness. They acted as my neighbours. I gather a rather important man told us to love our neighbours above ourselves, and that is what each of those people did for me, and what we are called to do for others. The real challenge from Jesus, though, comes from the story of the Good Samaritan. It can be really easy to focus ourselves on the communities that we've created, those around us, those we like. But Jesus challenges us to go one step further, not to worry about who the neighbour might be or where they might have come from, not to worry if they smell a bit or if they're really irritating or they like different things from you, but to love them, help them, be there for them and look after them no matter what. In order to work within our communities, we first need to work out who they are. Before modern technology, our community would have been the people who lived near us, but today it can be so much more. Once we know who our community is, we need to work out the best way to reach them. I engage very differently with my friends across Europe than I do the little old lady down the street. Maybe the people you need to reach aren't already part of a community. Then how can you build a positive community? How do you form a community that works together and for each other? Who is your community? What can you do for them? How can you reach them best? Who is your neighbour?